Welcome everybody to Mumbai, which will be the beginning of our mission alongside the Prime Minister, multiple ministers, as well as the Premier Holt from New Brunswick. We actually have started our meetings already, and we'll be meeting periodically throughout the weekend into next week as we head up to Delhi to meet with some government officials in Delhi, and then ultimately I'll be staying as the Canadian delegation leaves, and I'll be attending the Racina Dialogue conference there as well. From Saskatchewan and I think more broadly Canada's perspective, this is a real opportunity for us to engage, and for us as a province to support the Prime Minister and our federal ministers in really advancing the Canada-India trade relationship beyond where we've been able to over the course of the last number of years. I would hope for breathing some new life and some ambition into the comprehensive economic partnership agreement discussions, which I think are multi-sector, multi-industry, and really would provide some certainty for both Canadian commerce and Indian industries as well. Moving forward, and I think that would be a great benchmark to advance this week as well. From Saskatchewan's perspective, whenever we're in India, and we're here roughly every 2 years, or I have been in my time as Premier of the province, we will most certainly be engaging on pulses, as we always do. And agricultural products more broadly. We do have a pulse tariff currently that would be looking to hopefully be removed at some point in time, but certainly engaging on behalf of the Saskatchewan agriculture industry in that space, alongside a number of industry associations that will be in market here as well. Second to that, always engaging on behalf of our fertilizer products, specifically potash. We export a significant amount of potash to India and to many other countries around the world. And most certainly uranium and the potential for our Saskatchewan uranium companies to have access to ship some of their product into India, like we did from 2015 to 2020 under the nuclear cooperation agreement that we had at that point in time. And so, many opportunities for Saskatchewan, and I think more broadly, some real significant opportunities to advance some of those that broader trade relationship with India on behalf of all Canadians as well. And so we're happy to be here, support the Prime Minister, his ministers, alongside Premier Holt, to advance that conversation in any way that we can.
The Indian High Commissioner has said that they want basically as much energy as Canada has.
Yeah.
Be it crude, be it LNG,
Yeah.
talking about nuclear. What is your sense of what's possible, and particularly given some of the infrastructure limitations?
Well, I would say on the energy file specifically, just what comes to mind are three things are very possible in the near future. The first would obviously move forward on accessing Saskatchewan or Canadian uranium in the country of India, and I think that's entirely within the possibility to move quickly. We've been advocating and having meetings on that for some period of time, and I think in a somewhat of a fresh start or recalibration of this trade relationship as well. That opportunity is there, and with that comes discussions around, both of our nations being part of the nuclear outbuild that was committed to at COP28 in Dubai. Second to that, when you hear discussions around whether it be expansions of TMX or additional oil capacity to the west coast of Canada, this is one of the markets that those discussions are about. When we look at providing more Canadian oil off the west coast of our nation, that is headed for the Asian markets, and so India very much is part of that conversation. I think there's some opportunities there in the short term with the expansion of the existing pipeline that we have. And in the medium term, in actually whether it's building additional infrastructure or certainly getting more barrels of oil from largely Saskatchewan and Alberta, and to a lesser degree British Columbia, to that west coast. And that pipeline originates at Hardisty. Saskatchewan has a pretty significant oil producing field within 100 kilometers of Hardisty, and very much could directly be part of that supply chain as well. Last but not least, and this would be looking into the future a little bit, but is in the space of collaboration when it comes to rare earth elements. And as you know, in Saskatchewan, we do have a rare earth element processing facility. We have technology that can be replicated around the world, and there's some opportunities, I think, for discussions in that space as well, and some integration in all of the above spaces, whether it be through businesses or just through procuring those products. And I would just close with this. Each and every time we've been in India as a subnational delegation, it is our goal, and I would hope it's Canada's goal as well, and I suspect it is, to be a long-term sustainable trading partner. There are countries that want to buy certain products, once in a while. We certainly have the ability, I think, to provide many products reliably, and they're products that are some of the most sustainable, if not the most sustainable in the world, and they're ethically produced to the Indian market and the Indian people. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us, as I say, to advance not only the current trade relationship that we have, but whether it be through discussions around CEPA agreements, those types of things, to really expand on the current products that we are trading back and forth.
Do you believe that Mark Carney will actually get this pipeline built to the West Coast?
Yeah.
Why? The hurdles seem to be there, as they always were. There's going to be blowback from certain groups. BC doesn't be on board. Why do you believe Mark Carney will actually?
I think there's a tremendous amount of support as well, whether it be in Canada or around the world, for accessing the energy that we produce, particularly in this case in Western Canada. One, because of how it's produced from an environmental perspective. Two, how it's produced from an ethical perspective, in engaging not only with the folks that live in, Indigenous and otherwise, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, in the place where the product is produced, but all along the way. And those are, and that is work that has yet to be done. And I think Premier Smith has started embarking on the initial steps of just that work. We just built TMX not that many years ago, and so it certainly is within the realm of possibility that, one, we could expand TMX, which is the short-term work that can happen, and two is that the longer list of effort and work that has to happen if there's to be construction of another pipeline to the West Coast can be happening in the meantime. But I think it should be happening, and I certainly we're very, very supportive of that, and I certainly think that it can happen, and ultimately it will be the federal government's decision on whether or not that would be approved. Second to that, we live in a world today that is very much, hungry or thirsty for energy of all kinds, and going to be more hungry for energy. And I would suggest that we as Canadians have a responsibility to provide and displace some of the dirtier forms of energy, some of the more unethical forms of energy that are being produced in other areas of the world and being provided to those markets today. And so it's an opportunity for us as Canadians to not only do right by ourselves from an economic and environmental perspective, but to do right as global citizens as well.
Do you agree with the Canadian government officials' assessment that India is no longer actively participating in foreign interference? And what is your message to Sikhs in Saskatchewan and in Canada who disagree?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost that type of information with respect to our law enforcement agencies and whatnot, they work with the federal government and inform the federal government with respect to that. I am not privy to those conversations, but I do trust that the federal government certainly does manage Canadian safety and ensure that Canadians are safe. Certainly not just today, but moving forward as well. Second to that, we will have disagreements with various countries around the world that we still aspire to trade with. And even where those disagreements are present, it's important for us to not leave the conversation. It's important for us to be at the table in those countries where we have differences, but also where we have opportunities and points of agreement, to be able to talk our way through potentially what those disagreements are, to maybe come to an agreement, or certainly to capitalize on the spaces where we can work together. And I would suggest in the case of India with 1.4 billion people, trade is an area where I think we certainly can come to a mutual agreement that is beneficial to both countries. And I would suggest, if we just look back the last number of years, Canada and India have not been at that table having those discussions. And I would say from a trade perspective that we've fallen behind a number of other countries around the world. And so here we have one of the, if not the most populous country in the world with increasing increasing personal income coming to the families, and we're not at the table discussing long-term how we are going to trade certain products or not trade other products with this country. And I would suggest that we should stay at that table, regardless of our differences.
Are we coming at a point where the competition is too fierce?
Oh, we can compete. So Canada can certainly compete in any market around the world, whether it's.
You're saying we're late in the game, so India already signed free trade agreements.
We are late in the game from the perspective of free trade agreements and from the perspective of, having those long-term free trade or low tariff agreements in place. It doesn't mean we haven't been trading, and I think Saskatchewan is really the example. Is probably proportionally, certainly, Saskatchewan has been doing more trade with India than virtually all or many other provinces in Canada, in the absence of a free trade agreement, and in some of those years, actually, in the absence of, at times, a positive and conducive working relationship between our countries. I see that changing today. And yes, some difficult conversations I'm sure that will happen between our national governments, but it's changing today, and there's steps that are being taken by both countries that I think are very much conducive for us to catch up and catch up quickly. But we certainly can compete, whether it be from a quality of goods perspective. That's been our experience in the agricultural products, the pulse products, the potash, the uranium, the ultimately and potentially maybe some rare earth elements into the future, oil into the future as well. And certainly when you compare the environmental records of our products, and I'll speak to Saskatchewan specifically, to other products around the world, we stack up very well on top, essentially, when you compare any of those products to any products being produced, like products being produced in other areas of the world. And from an ethical perspective, as we spoke earlier, about some of the consultation that happens in the way of, if a pipeline is to be built, in the way of a major project that is going to be built, we very much have an inclusive conversation in our nation that ensures that that project is not only going to benefit the customer that at times is halfway around the world, but is going to benefit those folks and those families that live in the very area where that development is taking place. And I think that's important. And so from a sustainable perspective, an ethical perspective, a quality perspective, or a pricing perspective, I welcome the opportunity to compete with other countries around the world.
Can I just ask you about, you mentioned earlier about how much trade Saskatchewan does with India, and I initially was surprised when you were only one of the only two premiers who came, but the more I think about it, it's kind of a Saskatchewan trade story, this mission. I mean, a lot of the products are so how important is India trade to Saskatchewan? Do you do more business with India than other provinces?
Yes, and this would be our third largest market, sometimes maybe our fourth largest market, but a very, very significant market. And I think it's, two things I would say to that is we've been in this market as a subnational government. We have a trade office in this market as a subnational government. We had a trade commissioner that was granted their diplomatic status some time ago to represent and I think advocate not only on Saskatchewan's behalf, but Canada's behalf. And I think so in many ways. First point would be that Saskatchewan has showed the way on how you can do business, even in absence of trade agreements between Canada and India, and do significant business and form a significantly positive relationship in India as well. Second to that, this is a country of 1.4 billion people. The opportunities for us as a province of Saskatchewan, but I'd say more broadly, the other 9 provinces and 3 territories and collectively our nation, we have a tremendous opportunity to actually advance that trade, not only into other products, but into larger volumes of the products that we do trade already, and ultimately, to tremendously increase the value of exports that we currently send to India.
Do you expect relief on lentils and peas from this meeting or later?
There's a number of reasons why we will see tariffs, and each and every market around the world is somewhat different in this space. But in India, there are some domestic challenges with pricing, some of the domestic production, Indian agriculture, the producers here, where there's tariffs that are put on to support some of the domestic pricing, and so we're in this not for 1 year. certainly, in our relationship with India when it comes to providing pulses. But yes, aspirationally, I'd love to see the pulse tariffs removed and removed before we leave at the end of the week. I certainly, and I've heard some discussion that in this case of lentils, that there's some discussion that they might actually increase to some degree, and so, possibly in the short term, the scenario that we look for is that they're status quo until we can return maybe sometime in the very near future and have them removed, or have them be part of a broader comprehensive economic partnership agreement where we would have some non-tariff or low tariff certainty for years into the future, as opposed to having these discussions every few years.
What about uranium? You mentioned uranium nuclear. Are you expecting a deal to sell uranium, or what's going on with that?
Well, we did sell Saskatchewan and Cameco specifically was a provider of uranium under the Nuclear Cooperation Agreement that was signed and in effect in 2015 for 5 years until 2020. I believe about 7 million tons of uranium was actually provided to the Indian market. We've been working and advocating and communicating and having discussions about renewing that agreement since my very first trade mission as Premier was in 2019, and it was to India. And I think that's when we had our first meetings with the Atomic Energy Agency, I believe, and other Indian officials on potentially renewing that agreement. We haven't been able to do that, but we still advocate and have meetings as recently as a few moments ago in that space. So certainly that is a short-term opportunity, I think, for India, as we see them on a very aggressive nuclear outbuild, like many other countries around the world, to be able to access in a long-term way, sustainable Saskatchewan uranium for clean nuclear power.
Sorry, Premier, can you describe how the relationship is different, bilateral relationship is different now under this Prime Minister compared to what it was like under the last one?
It was very serious and I would say credible representation that we have, whether it be in India or many of our international markets around the world. And we've been in these markets throughout some challenging times over the last number of years. And I would say that we're quite pleased as a province to be joined by the Prime Minister, to have him looking to, if not sign some degrees, memorandum of understandings, agreements to move forward in the trade space, signing actually, committing to actually negotiating, broad-based agreements like the CEPA agreement as well. And so we very much appreciate the seriousness and the credibility that Prime Minister Mark Carney is bringing not only to the trade relationship that we have with India, but many other countries around the world as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Premier.